for this webinar hosted by the CTBUH EDI Committee. Today, we're going to be talking with the leadership team of the Williams and Russell Project in Portland, Oregon, the winner of the 2024 CTBUH EDI Award. This groundbreaking project aims to empower and honor Portland's Black community by providing affordable housing, homeownership opportunities, and business support on an urban site. I'm Megan McDermott with Robert Stern Architects, or RAMSA, and I'm the chair of the CTBUH EDI Committee. And we have a fantastic group of panelists here today. Azalea Renfield, the Executive Director of Williams and Russell, Bryson Davis, the President of Williams and Russell, and Kymberly Horner, Executive Director of the Portland Community Reinvestment Initiative. Also joining us are Jeremy Mayhew, founder and CEO of JRMI Consulting, and Jeremy is also part of our EDI committee leadership, and Will Miranda, the Senior Research Manager at CTBUH, also an EDI committee member. And just to say a few words about the mission of the EDI committee, CTBUH recognizes that to advance vertical urbanism and improve urban environments, we have to address what that means for all people in our cities. And as global leaders of the AEC industry, we feel strongly that we have a responsibility, notwithstanding the current political climate, to become a driver of equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives and best practices across the industry to better serve the people in the urban environments that we're all so passionate about. And this is not just about creating a committee or launching one program, it's about working collaboratively with members to fundamentally change the way that we work and operate. How and for whom we build is just as important as what we build. And now Will is going to say a few words about this EDI award and the process for this awards program.
Perfect. Thank you, Megan. So our awards program was actually launched in 2002. It recognizes projects and individuals that had made extraordinary contributions to the advancement of tall buildings in the urban environment and achieved sustainability and well-being at the highest and broadest level. Over the 20 plus years that we've had the award program, we've recognized over 800 projects across 20 different categories, including our Best Tall Building Award, Urban Habitat Award, Structure Award, and many others. But during the 2023 awards program, the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Award was introduced by CTBUH's EDI committee. This award was created to expand beyond exclusively tall building projects, recognizing that to advance vertical urbanism and improve urban environments, we must address what that means for our occupants of our cities and to the wider public. This award recognizes the specific area of equity, diversity, and inclusion in our industry in both practice and in policy, as well as in specific projects that have achieved achievements within the realm of EDI. We hope that highlighting these award-winning submissions can help encourage the creation of cities and environments that are safer, healthier, and more accessible for everyone. The inaugural year for our award, we had 4 submissions that were selected as Award of Excellence winners, with representatives from each submission speaking at our 2023 International Conference. We built on this momentum in 2024 with the following 5 projects selected as Award of Excellence winners. Diversifying the Talent Pipeline from Turner Construction Company, Empowering People from Kone, Equitable Transit-Oriented Development Strategy Study from Perkins & Will, and the La Central Project from FX Collaborative Architects. And last but not least, the Williams and Russell Project from Williams and Russell CDC with development partners Audrey and the Portland Community Reinvestment Initiatives. Following our presentations at the 2024 International Conference and a deliberation from our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Award jury, the Williams and Russell Project was selected as the overall winner in 2024. So we're really excited to have them here to share more about their project. But I'm sure you can all imagine that that jury deliberation process can get slightly complicated and a lot of strong voices in the room. So we're going to hear shortly from one of our jury members on how these projects were selected as Award of Excellence winners and some of the process that goes into these discussions to select projects and ultimately select the overall winner.
Thank you, Will. And on that note, I'd like to go now to Jeremy. And Jeremy, you have been a member of the EDI Awards jury for the past 2 years, both in 2023 and 2024. And so it would be great for you to offer some thoughts and perspectives from the viewpoint of the awards jury.
Well, thank you, Megan. Yes, I was. First of all, it's great to be invited to join you all today and to give some perspective from the awards jury. I was lucky enough to be on the jury in 2023 and last year 2024. In 2023, we had a good number of submittals, and they were very high quality, and that was a tricky decision. But when we go to 2024, the numbers increased and the quality was just amazing. So it was a really tough process to go through, a really tough decision to make. In the request for award submittals, we had, and you touched on it earlier, Megan, we referred back to basically our mission statement, and that the need to address and asking the people who submitted awards to address what it means for all people in terms of our members, our clients, ultimately the wider public, that the industry should hold itself accountable to encourage environments that are safer, healthier, and more accessible for everyone. To do so, we must recognize and actively address any shortcomings in the areas of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and that this award should recognize the specific area of equity, diversity, and inclusion in our industry, both in practice and policy, as well as in specific projects. So we realized that we would be looking for maybe a combination, either a project or a policy or a program and processes. And the Williams and Russell submittal and presentation really pulled all these together, which was great to see. The presentation in the London conference addressed all these issues, and it was given with such passion, and the care and skill that has gone into the project was quite inspirational, as I'm sure you're about to see. So if I hand back to you, Megan, maybe we can actually hear from the team themselves.
Thanks, Jeremy. Absolutely. And I should note, just before we dig in here, that people are welcome to ask questions during this webinar in the chat. And towards the end, during the Q&A, we will then share your questions so that our panelists can respond. So now I'm going to hand it off to Azalea to give us an overview of the Williams and Russell project.
Thank you, Megan. So first of all, I want to say hi to everyone online. I mean, it really is such an honor to be seen in this capacity, to be able to share our work and the love that we have come to love and implement for our community. I do want to take a little bit of a moment just to say thank you for our award. We did win in 2 categories. Yay! Just so we're very grateful. And again, the work we do this work because we care and we love what we do, but it's also nice to be recognized too. So without further ado, we would love to show you a quick little overview about Williams and Russell. My name is Azalea Renfield. I'm the executive director. With me, I have Bryson Davis, our president, and then also Kymberly Horner, our executive director of one of our development partners. So Bryson, let's go ahead and get started.
Great. I'm going to share my screen so everybody can see the presentation.
We can see it. Thank you.
Great. All right. So process is big. But before you can really get into the process of doing a development, you've got to first identify the harm. And so for our project specifically, the harm was a redevelopment urban renewal project that the City and Legacy Health or Emmanuel Hospital at the time did, where they removed designated as blights and ultimately demolished many buildings in what at the time was the central African American area of Portland. So 40s to the 60s, this was the center of African American commerce, a bustling neighborhood. The condemnation displaced 171 families. 74% of them were Black. It also removed about 36 Black-owned businesses. Um, the uh, the land was given to the hospital so the hospital could expand. 70 or 50 years later, the hospital still hadn't built anything. And so the city went to the hospital and said, look, under our agreement, you were supposed to develop this land and you haven't, you should give it back to the community. And that's what sort of started the process for our project. The city convened a nominating committee of all of the community partners that it worked with in order to then bring together a group which became the project working group of community leaders, people who represented Black community facing nonprofits, people who were just prominent members of the Black community at large, and people who had expertise in different areas of development together to think about what would be the most beneficial for these types of development, and then effectively lead the process for figuring out who would do the development and what would go on the site. So as a result of that process, we ended up with we ended up forming a new nonprofit which is our organization right now, the Williams and Russell CDC, to be in charge of and manage the development. So we formed the nonprofit with the idea of keeping stakeholders in the project and community members engaged. We require that on our board we have at least 3 members who are representing Black community nonprofits, at least 2 Black business owners, and at least 2 people who represent people who were displaced by the original expansion. So it could be a family member. They could be a member of a group of displaced people. After going through our process, surveying the community, engaging our various community-facing networks, we really came away with 4 big components that really spoke to the wealth restoration goals of the project. So one was affordable housing, and this is both ownership and rental. We've got and PCRI has several other affordable rental housing projects across the city. And while more of that was needed, there was also a big push to provide an ownership component to this as well, because home ownership being such a big basis of people's wealth and people's savings. Another big piece was entrepreneurial training and support. This was supporting Black-owned businesses. As I mentioned before, we lost in the mid-30s of Black businesses that effectively had to shut down as part of the condemnation. Black businesses were never really on the same footing as other businesses in the city. And so having this development really support building up Black businesses in many different industries was a key goal. Another key goal was community space. One of the big things that the initial harm did was it decimated and leveled a big chunk of the Black community at the time. And that displaced a lot of people. And you add that to the later years of gentrification that occurred in the area, and the community didn't feel like it had the same amount of gathering spaces, socializing spaces, places to hold community events that it had in the past. And so providing spaces for that was a key goal. And then lastly, making this development a quality development. There's been many historical examples of projects that mean well, but aren't built to the highest quality. They fall apart. They have issues. And so one of the things that we are really focusing on as part of our process and part of the goals, and that we really heard that the community wanted to see, was quality buildings that are energy efficient, they're sustainable, they're resilient to the changing climate, and they're built to last. Kymberly, do you want to talk a little bit about the continuum housing?
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bryson, and to the rest of the viewers that are listening. It's really an honor for PCRI to be part of this project. Our organization has been around since 1992, and it was simply to address some of the historic displacement, racism, redlining, and all the other things that Bryson was speaking about. Our organization is not just an affordable housing nonprofit. We serve as a developer. When we develop, it's in keeping with Bryson was saying, in that we develop multifamily complex buildings, which are for rent without compromise. So our tagline is really building affordable housing without compromise. Many of our programs baked into our organization are also in place to address the needs of culturally specific people living in our buildings. We address the culturally specific responsive services that are required when you house people, and that is where we lead. Diversity of housing, apartments, townhomes, and accessory dwelling units, ADUs, are also big components of addressing the needs of the Black community when they move back into spaces that they were historically displaced from. The family size units that will go into the development of the multifamily rental complex will be a majority of 2 and 3 bedrooms. And again, this is all from feedback that we received early on when all the community meetings were being held about what was necessary for the development of the site. We also know that family sized homes are very important to keeping our families intact. So that's one of the reasons why we are responding to this project with those needs. We also build with ADA, Americans with Disabilities, accessible housing needs into consideration with everything that we build. And then resilient buildings, as Bryson mentioned, in response to climate changes. There is a piece that we have, which is called the Portland Clean Energy Fund, that helps projects like this address the need to build with weather resistant and energy efficiency products to help keep the buildings comfortable for the user as well as affordable to run. And then again, because of the population that we serve, always taking into consideration that we're building healthy buildings for the Black population, because we know that historically Black people are typically housed in areas where that's not taken into consideration, but this site certainly addresses that need.
Thanks, Kymberly. So what you're looking here, but what you see before your eyes is a very essence of what equity and diversity and inclusion looks like. We have simply the best of the best on this project, but particularly what I really want to talk about is our board and how it's strategized. The intent behind this organization was really to be intentional with all delivery, and that we actually take a holistic approach in how we build. Our board is not, these members here are actually holding a slate. In other words, we have 2 board members here that are tied to the community. We call them heritage board members, who are actually part of the displacement that occurred here on this property. We also were slated to have 2 seats where we actually house or support 2 entrepreneur businesses, so we can hear about the small business world. And then last and certainly not least, we have the organizations. We want to have 2 to 3 organizations on the board that actually represent the community at large. This is how we do a real comprehensive approach. You will also notice that most all the faces on here are Black professionals. And as you know, it really simply is of the best of the best. Reputation preceding them. You see very Kymberly Horner's there. I mean, we're doing some amazing, amazing, amazing work. Next slide, please. Now, take a look at this rendering. This is the brilliance that's right before our eyes. This is the emergence of a niche development called reparative development. Please make a note of that, reparative development. This project is estimated to cost $120 million. And I'm so happy to talk about these projects, and we're just going to go through it quickly. But this is what it's going to look like. And if you notice along the periphery is the city of Portland. But this unique property is 1.7 acres, is going to be not just housing, not just home ownership, but economic development. This, folks, is economic and community development. And they're not to be mutually exclusive, but they complement one another. So next slide. So here's our business hub. This is 4 stories dedicated to all things business retention, business attraction, co-working space, all things that's going to be business. We even have a retail on the ground floor, shared space. This is going to be like truly the epicenter of all things commerce. And this is going to be out and ready to go in 2027. So this is something that's really coming. There's been great detail into this building. We're going through conceptual design, schematic design, I should say. We're super excited about this project, but this is the Black Business Hub. As you see, there's on that balcony there is going to be a community space where folks who might want to hold community gatherings, they're welcome to come here and use this space. Next slide. Here we have what Kymberly Horner is going to be leading, an 85-unit building, 2 to 3 bedrooms. And this is affordable housing. And this is going to be this probably like the largest project in the sense of moving people and families. And then on the ground floor, there is going to be also a childcare on the property. So this is just a massive build, super excited about it. Next slide. And then last and certainly not least, home ownership. 20 townhomes slated to be completed next year. And 4 of these units will have ADUs attached to it as well to create some multifamily living situations. But this is what I'm saying about really what economic and community development looks like. It's a holistic approach. Next slide. So before we go to Q&A, I just simply want to just reiterate the importance about reparative development. Reparative development is real estate development with a goal that seeks to right a wrong or to heal a damage or based off policies or practices that displace families and peoples and commerce. So it's a different way to reconceptualize what reparations could possibly look like and how reparations really do supersede color, gender. It's about really just making sure that all communities are supported in a meaningful way that involves and bring everybody to the table. So without further ado, I'm turning it back to Megan. Thank you for listening to our presentation, and we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Azalea and Kymberly and Bryson. There are so many interesting facets of this project and this process, and I think I'd like to go back to what Azalea you just said about reparative development, and Bryson, you began the presentation talking about this, and it's really quite interesting and innovative, this approach, and it really has global applications, doesn't it? Because while the cultural issues and specifics are unique to different cities and different countries and regions of the world, the issues in India and Asia and South America and Europe may be different from those in the United States. This notion of, I loved what you said about repairing relationships first and foremost, and the outgrowth of that is, for example, a project like this. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I'll just start off and advice and kind of sum it up. What we learned from this project is you can't tell people how to feel because you will lose every single time. It's no secret that trust has been eroded and continues to be eroded just throughout the nation, even internationally. People just don't trust people. So in order to do this type of reparative development, you really got to build trust and coalitions. Bryson, but you want to talk a little bit about our partnerships and how government is involved in this?
Yeah, so one of the things that we once we started going through this process and really getting deep into this development, and word getting out that we were pursuing this project in this way, we had people from across the country reach out thinking about their own potential projects, their own potential areas, and it really started to highlight um, uh, Megan, what you were getting at, which is that these sorts of harms happen everywhere. It's in the United States, we've got many examples in many cities of um, different minority groups being railroaded and being developed effectively over at various points in our history. But I mean, it's not unique to just the United States as well. There's many countries that have ethnic groups or have minority racial groups or have other smaller groups that get developed over, get pushed out, and things like that. And really we found attaching the development to those specific instances, to those specific harms, really helps people bring home and realize what it is that we're trying to fix and what it is about the relationship to government entities and other organizations that may have had a role in them, whether they be developers or, in our case, health systems, repairing those the reputations and the connections of those organizations to the community. That's highlighted by the fact that you're focused in on a specific harm, a specific thing that was done in the past.
Yeah, yeah, that's so great, and it ties into the specific group and the specific harm. And Kymberly, you said in your remarks that you went to the community to find out directly from the community what their needs were, and I also remember from your presentation at the conference too that the process of communication that you undertook with your constituents, with the community, was so important. And this is always a challenge for anyone doing a development anywhere, but it seems like the process that you undertook here was even more carefully thought out and calibrated to make sure that this project is really of and for the community. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that and some of the strategies and even the lessons learned about that. How do you set up a successful process like this?
Yeah, thank you. I'll answer part of that and I'll also turn it over to my colleagues on this. But when I joined this group, it was in 2019, and a lot of the legwork had already been done with a lot of focus groups that looked at the site and really reached out to the public to find out exactly what they wanted to have back on the site. Now, I come from a very strong background in economic development and city government, and I found this to be a very meaningful exchange of conversations with the public because many times when government is involved, that public participation piece is lacking. And the government agencies will take in some concepts, but they really then don't go back and try to noodle over how they're going to make some of those things grow out of what they learned. I'll turn it over to Bryson to give a little more example of how the conversations continued on and got to where we are today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I think this is one of the strengths of starting the process with the project working group. So, we're starting the process with a group of community leaders and people connected to the community who are then steering the direction of where this is going. And so in our early discussions, what that allowed everyone to do is tap into their network of people who are in the community to bring them in, to survey them. We had many different groups and meetings and surveys through churches, through social groups, through other nonprofit organizations, where we were able to bring in the people that we were trying to connect with and trying to serve with this project to see what they wanted, what their values were. And then we continue that as we go through the development of the process of the project itself. You know, we reached out when we were doing the townhome development. I don't know if any of you saw one of the earlier renderings of our project, but the townhomes looked completely different, and they were a completely different concept. And you know, at one point we had 7 different options for the townhomes. And one of the things that we did is work with another community member who specializes in bringing members of the community to the table to go over different concepts, different ideas, different layouts, and that's how we ended up with the townhome options that we have today. You know, we had uh, it just kind of culminated in a big meeting where we had about 70 people in the room saying, we like this design, we don't like this design, we have a concern on this, we value this part of the home, we don't value this part of the home. And that really helped shape what we ultimately, what's ultimately going to get built.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because you've begun that process to determine what needs to be built, and then Azalea, you or one of you showed the image of the team, you know, the entire development team and the community members. And so this notion of full transparency, that it's like a reciprocal process. You know, you're going out to the community and hearing from them and coming back, but then you've set up accountability going forward, right, with
Oh,
the
yeah.
community. And I mean, I have to imagine that that has built confidence and, you know, really engendered trust amongst your team and the
Oh, yeah.
community.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talked earlier about the notion about trust being kind of at an all-time low. You know, when when harms are done, you know, there's always a reluctance to trust people. You know, it takes a long time to build trust. But when we talk about reparative development, I would be remiss if I didn't state that the super important part of that was the formal apology. And the mayor, Ted Willer, went before the city and said, we have to acknowledge what happened in the past. It was wrong. And it was only
Wow.
then that the conversation can have be had to be able to move forward. That's the piece that was like so critical, because oftentimes realizing we're not responsible for what maybe happened like 50, 60 years ago, right? But there's still some onus, some ownership, or just a formal acknowledgement, at the very least, or an apology from the powers that be to make that, to be able to move forward. So I think that part was what we were able to build community, bring everybody into the table, into the room where it happens, not to quote Hamilton, but certainly those are the things that matter. And that was the way we were able to, you know, build trust. And on our website, whoever touched this project, contractors, consultants, accountants, everyone is listed on our website. And that was a way to build trust, so people don't have to wonder who's touched the project, who's involved. It's all there, from funders to janitors, everyone's on the website. Again, building trust. Say what you mean and mean what you say. And I think that's what we've been trying to do, make sure we keep documenting, and sharing our work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to add to that, we had a community meeting where we met with the neighborhood association recently, and it was the Azalea and I and a member of the development team of Audrey, who was there, and we were getting the tough questions that you get whenever you're bringing a new development into a neighborhood. You know, how's you know people who've done their homework on the affordable housing and the land use issues and things like that. But what I think really helps us be persuasive and dampen people's, the small concerns that they had about the project was that it wasn't just the developer coming in and um, giving the description, talking about the benefits of the project, describing what they were going to do. Because developers, just like the city governments, just like the big organizations, and in the community that we're trying to serve, they all have a deficit of trust. But we had community members at the table who were help leading the projects, also representing this is where the project's going to go, and reminding everybody that the community was still driving and still steering where the project was going and what the benefit of the project is going. And so that helps people don't um, people don't kid themselves. They know developers are involved and developers can make money from the project. But it is a lot easier for them to get over that hurdle of trusting developers and trusting government agencies when the community is out front with them.
Yeah.
And to also touch on what Bryson is saying, it is the first time that the community has seen Black people that they've known for a lot of years who are professionals in their respective areas of development, housing, government, leadership, law. Bryson's an attorney. And it's the first time that people have ever seen a lineup of professional Black people put together a development on a piece of land that is for Black people by Black people. So this is a very unique situation that you probably haven't seen in the United States in general. And it's something that we should really be extremely proud of. The other piece to this is when we talk about the economic development of it, there's another term that when I put my economic development hat on, I use, it's economic gardening. And the work that we are doing is really pushing out opportunities for everybody in the community to really have an opportunity to be uplifted by this work. Whether it's you're the person that's changing the flat tire on the truck that's supposed to, deliver the wood to the site. There's so much richness in helping other small businesses, large businesses, all be uplifted as a result of this $120 million project being developed. It's pushing out probably close to $500 million into the community just by the development alone of it.
That's so interesting. That was one of my questions was, how has this development spurred other economic development and other projects in this neighborhood or around the city? And I also, you talked about overcoming the trust deficit within the community of developers and development teams based on past history and experience. But I wonder too, like with the city approvals process, it's always difficult, any city, anywhere. And, but starting with this project, starting with the apology from the mayor, you said, which is so powerful. I wonder, was there anything different than about your process with the city as a result of the way all of this was laid out and set up to begin with?
Yeah, it was hugely different. And I've got several different clients who go through different development projects for building different types of buildings, from apartment buildings to shopping centers and things like that. And when you have multiple city departments who are bought in to your projects, it clears the way for everything else on the city level as well as on the state level. We had an issue where we were looking at intersection improvements that the Bureau of Transportation would have imposed on us. But because we're so tightly connected to and so well supported by the economic development arm of the city as well as the housing arm of the city, when we got to that point, the Bureau of Transportation was more than willing to help work and adjust those requirements so that we weren't sitting there adding another $700,000-$800,000 to the projects. It got reduced significantly, and the red tape to get it done was reduced significantly. When we go to DEQ, which is our state's environmental agency, they have a lot more trust in our projects doing what we say that we're going to do and doing it in a responsible way than I've seen them have with other of my clients. And so it's just a much higher level of trust on the government side because we've also brought in other areas of the government and really tied them into the project, and they're a big chunk of the essence of the project. Government agencies trust each other more than they trust the people out in the private. And so again, if you're bringing everybody together as part of the project, and you can put the people out front that need to be out front, you can build that trust, and you can really smooth the path that things that normally can really trip up developments.
Sure. Yeah.
The city is also bringing some financial resources. So in not just the people power, but financial resources for the apartment complexes. We're in discussions about a $1.5 million pre-development loan from the city to help get that piece going. We received $2.5 million from our United States Senators Wyden and Merkley from congressional earmarks dollars to support the project. And that's just my small piece of it. And so there's a lot of dollars that are flowing from various government agencies to help support this project.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really encouraging to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I know that some of our viewers may have questions. So Jeremy and Will, if there are any questions in the chat, let us know. Otherwise, yeah.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, and it's spurred on by a comment in the chat from Heesun Choi. And it says, it's great to see so many women in leadership roles on the project team, which it definitely is. So my question actually in two parts. The first part is, and I probably know the answer to this, did you find any, did you have to engineer any sort of makeup of the team? How did it grow? Did it grow organically? And did you find all the skills that you need to pull off this development? Second part of the question is, with all the people who are going to know about the project and see this and hear about what you're doing, you already said, Bryson, that there are people who contacted you, even in your city as well. What advice would you give to them if they're thinking about, doing something similar to you? And it may be in different cultures, different heritages, as Megan said, it could be anywhere around the world. What would you say to them to give them confidence?
Well, I guess I'll take it and Bryson can conclude with it. I would just say, in terms of being a woman in leadership, I've had the privilege and the honor to have Kymberly Horner open up her arms wide open, because again, she's seasoned, and I looked at her as a mentor. So she's skilled, and she's skilled in her area. She's, she comes from California. She comes knowing her stuff. So I look to her for a lot of guidance. And I look at her as a mentor, and she's been so receptive to that. People always think that you get to choose your mentors, but oftentimes your mentors choose you. That's how it really works.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, as you see when I showed you the staff makeup or the team makeup, there were several women represented. Now, I don't know if that was intentional. Bryce could probably talk to that more, but certainly, at least in this arena, when it comes to professionalism, that's why I want to make sure that when we think about EDI work, it gets conflated with this notion of affirmative action, but it's two different things. EDI is just simply saying, get the best, be open to the best, that they may not look like you. That's all it's saying. It's not saying you got to undersell yourself. It's about finding the best and being open to somebody that may not look like you to be at the table. And that goes for women and color alike. And so I've been lucky in this arena to be here to have Kymberly as my mentor and helping me out and giving me great advice. And so I thank her for that. So actually, I'll turn it to Kymberly and advice and can say how it kind of came together. Kymberly, her experience might have been different.
Yeah. So with our organization, we've had Black female leadership overseeing this organization, PCRI, for almost 32 years. But we are a premier developer, and we are also an affordable housing provider. So we get people ready for home ownership through our training programs. We're a property management arm, and we are a developer. So it was only a natural conclusion for us to be part of the RFP and to help the RFP get awarded to an all-Black team. I will turn the conversation over to Bryson, because that's just my part as a woman in leadership and how we came to the table.
Yeah, so throughout the process, we haven't had to be intentional to get the leadership team that we've got, because we started with such a broad connection to the community that everybody who was interested in really doing this work came to the surface and stepped up to be involved. And that we got a whole variety of people, a whole variety of ages, a whole, many people from both sexes, a whole variety of backgrounds, even a decent variety of incomes and education levels. And that just comes from being inclusive with your process. And so the more inclusive your process, the easier it is to find people who represent the different components of it. And remind me of the second part of the question?
What was
I think
the,
that's
so,
advice.
okay.
Oh, advice. Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
go ahead, Bryson. I'll talk about, you can get the advice, I'll give the advice from the woman's point of view. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So I think I think one of the biggest piece of advice, right, is kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, which is attaching what you're doing to the original harm, and then the original harm was perpetrated not usually by just one actor. It's usually multiple actors, and almost always the government, the local government had a hand in it in one way or another. And starting the project with getting those parties on board with really contributing to the repair of that harm. That's really key to get the components that you need to have a smooth process, to have a very community-facing process, and to get the latitude that you need to develop what you need to develop. So, like if we, for instance, tried to do our projects and didn't have the city on board, acknowledging that they played a big role and probably played the biggest role in the original harm, that would make this project monumentally more difficult. Same thing with the hospital. The hospital acknowledging their role in the original harm. That's helped us get the land to do the building to begin with, and it's helped us remediate the environmental and cover the environmental remediation costs on the land as well. And a big chunk of this is bringing people on board from the beginning, including them into the project from the beginning, and giving them a stake in the project's outcomes.
Yeah.
And lastly, I would just say, just from the woman's point of view, and Kymberly, you might want to weigh on this part. Being a Black woman in leadership is very difficult. And it's not because we often come with the stereotypical way of being mad or angry. It really is because it's quite the opposite. It's actually the fact of being cooperative, bringing people to the table and taking more of I find that even in Kymberly, it's been nothing but inclusiveness, like bringing people to the table and be willing to listen and to not have to really be like rude or assertive, but to really just like, no, I'm here to listen and learn. And again, I don't come in thinking I know everything. I want to make sure that everybody's bringing something to the table. And Kymberly is a great example of that. And Kymberly, maybe you can give some advice. I think my advice would just be to go to people who are willing to hear from you, and it makes a world of a difference.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate all the things that Azalea is saying, and this work keeps you very busy, and it doesn't lend itself time to allow you to be a mentor to just anyone. So you have to have good people to work with. If you see Azalea's resume, she's got several different degrees, and that led me to believe that I'm working with a smart cookie that will be a quick study. So whenever she needs access, I'm open to allowing her to get on my schedule so we can work through things quickly. But what you see right now is just a piece of the work that needs to get done. But once you start working with the lenders and the financial institutions and doing all of your capital stacking, you're probably not going to see our faces, because that is the area of this work where we are significantly left out. And I share that because that's the area that now I want to lend my time to breaking those doors down. Because when you talk about discrimination in housing, it's actually starting at the whole financing level, where Black women, Black people in general are not as welcome to the table in those arenas. And those are the arenas that really make or break a project, which means that is where we really need to be.
Yeah. You are so right. Speaking as a woman, not a Black woman, obviously, but a woman in the industry, the capital stack and where the money comes from, that's how all this happens, and who controls the flow of money. And
Yes.
so I hear you, and I understand exactly what you're saying.
So I
Got
think
time for
Van
one
had
more question?
a question in the chat that
Yeah.
I'd be happy
Yeah.
to address. So Van asked, how will the city budget shortfall affect funding for the project? So for those of you who don't know, Portland is, we just changed our city government, and that whole change, as well as dealing with the general homelessness epidemic, has caused us to have a budget shortfall for the next couple of years. But for our project, it really doesn't affect us very much at all. And really, the reason for that is funding pools. So one of the advantages that real estate development has over some of the other city programs is the ability to use tax increment financing to get funding for projects. And you think about a lot of um, the money that's coming from Prosper Portland, which is our economic development arm, and the Portland Housing Bureau. That comes from the urban renewal area and the tax increment financing that's done there. That gives them access to huge buckets of money that they can put, especially into real estate and development projects. It's it's a little bit like using one of the tools that was wielded against the community in the past to then um, raise the community up in the future. So that's one key thing. And the other key thing is, and I hope our project can also be a promotional tool for the Portland Clean Energy Fund. That is funded outside of the normal city budget through its own tax, and it's focused on real estate improvements, building improvements, energy efficiencies, and things like that. And it's really allowed us to go above and beyond the base level of quality for our buildings, and having and promoting and supporting programs like that in your area can be a great way to insulate projects like this from the ups and downs of budget shortfalls and the ups and downs of politics. We've had the question of how are we impacted by the change in the federal administration, and the answer has really been not much, because only small parts of our funding and our capital stack came from those politically dependent programs, and a lot of them come from these areas that have like their own strong and solid funding sources that aren't as connected to the whims of government and the ups and downs of general funds.
Well, I I don't know, Will. Do we have time for one more question? I know we're just about out of time here. We can talk much longer about all this, I know.
Yeah, maybe just brief closing statements is about all we have time for.
Okay. Well, I guess I just want to thank our panel today, Azalea, Bryson, Kymberly, Jeremy, and Will. This has really been a fascinating conversation, and I think there's so much that we can take away from this as we think about the work that we are all doing with projects in our cities. And again, this is such an inspirational project, and we really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your perspectives with all of us. And
Yeah.
and yeah, and if you have anything else you'd like to add before we sign off, please feel free.
Yes, I actually do. Before I turn it over to Kimberly and Bryson, I just want to say three things. One is just EDI, DEI, whatever, however you choose to say it, matters. And we know under the current administration that this is something that's being attacked and co-opted, if you will, and just to adjust for the hyperbole. I think it might be important to understand that, again, this is, bringing people that don't look like you matters, and hearing people's voice matters, especially if you're in the business of development and community building and building these beautiful buildings. You want to make sure they're housed with communities that makes up a variety of people from different creeds and backgrounds is super, super important. So just because it might be kind of under attack at the federal level doesn't mean the work stopped. This work still transcend the borders of the United States of America. It's good for Canada. It's good for China, Japan, Italy. This work is incredibly important. So diversify your table and get people on the table to help inform their own community building. Secondly, I just want to say the importance of reparative development. It will be a matter of contemporary policy. You heard it here first. Reparative development matter. And if anybody wants to talk more about that, please contact us. We're happy to have a conversation about that. Super, super important. And then lastly, I just want to say, I'm looking forward to the conference this year. I certainly would hope to be there, and my team and I, Kymberly and Bryson, will want to be there and make sure we support you all. So if you need something from us, we're happy to acquiesce and help you out. Bryson, Kymberly, any final words?
I would say that allowing us an opportunity to be on this platform has really elevated the project itself, as well as us as individuals. So we want to say thank you very, very much. When we were in England and we saw the competition, I was just really, really impressed and actually surprised that we won. And so that has been extremely helpful. So I am forever grateful to you folks for looking at us with a clear lens and recognizing the work that we are doing is important. And thank you for elevating us in that way.
Yeah, the last few things that I would add, one is patience. And, community facing, community involved development projects, getting the people that you need to get at the table, and figuring out ways where projects like this can fit into everybody's capacities and budgets. It takes time, and it's a much longer process than a normal development. And going into that development, expecting it to take more time, expecting to have patience, expecting sometimes to explain the same concept to people 2 or 3 times over, is something that you need to approach these sorts of projects with in order to really be successful. You can build a project quickly, but you're not going to get the same community buy-in as if you take the time and have the patience to bring people along with you. And so, I would add that to all the stuff that we've said today, combining people, treating this with open arms, but patience and trust in the process, I think is one of the key goals as well.
Fantastic. Well, Azalea and Bryson and Kymberly, we look forward to staying in touch with you and hearing more as this project goes forward. And we'll be very eager to see photos as the construction comes online and to hear about what's happening in the community as a result of all of this. So we're really thrilled to know you and to know this project, and we want to stay in touch about all of this as everything goes forward. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all again. And thanks to everyone in the audience who joined us today. We're so glad that you did. And as a reminder to members, the awards submittals are due the 14th of February. Is that right, Will? For the 2025 program. So we encourage everyone to submit, and also there will be a recording of this webinar made available to members later on the CTBUH website. Is that right, Will? In the video library section. So, all right. And with that, I think we'll close it out. But thank you again so much, everybody. This was a fantastic conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.